Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, sunshines. I hope you're awesome. It is Friday. And I am super excited because we're coming to you a little later than normal, which is going to be super fun with a guest, an incredible woman. You're going to hear about her story. This is Janeen Olmos, and she was introduced to us by another community member, Rhonda, who you saw with her interview a couple of weeks ago. And we want to bring some interesting conversation to the table because every business owner has a story. No two journeys are the same, but I want to keep it real and talk about, let me unwind this journey and shed the light onto the things that we don't put out into conversation very often. And that's what the show is all about. So tell me, Janeen, did you think you would be an entrepreneur? Is this something you imagined would be your path? Or tell me about how the journey began.
So the journey began a couple of years ago when I was going through burnout and I hired a coach. I didn't know anything about coaching. I've been a mental health therapist for years and heard about coaching, but I really didn't understand it. So I hired a coach, and she is the one who proposed the idea to me. However, my parents were entrepreneurs to some extent. My dad was a farmer, and I saw the hell he went through. And I was like, no way am I ever going to be an entrepreneur. No way. No way. So I resisted it for decades. And then this coach brought to my mind, she's like, it's going to be hard to do therapy your whole life. And she just made me think about, how I could maybe control my destiny. And, she definitely downplayed the hard work I would have to do.
Well, I don't care what kind of business you're crafting.
Yeah.
Effort is required.
Yes.
It doesn't happen now. We keep talking about that hard love this week was, rainbows and unicorns don't show up and just trip over you and open their wallet. You do have to build your business, and you build it on the basis of meeting new people and strangers.
Yeah. Yeah. And luckily I was fairly comfortable with that, but it does get difficult. And I think the hardest part was figuring out what I wanted to do. It honestly took me about 2.5 years to figure out what I really wanted to do. It was just trial and error. And that was the hardest part. It was so frustrating. I'd start something and then back off. And I'm like, that doesn't feel right. And I'd start something and back off. And I'm finally feeling like my feet are grounded in what I'm doing right now. And it's finally resonating at like a deep level. Yeah.
This is a really interesting point because I think it's something we don't talk about. I think, I'm a bit of a unique place. I did know I would be an entrepreneur. I never imagined of the 3 businesses I hold today that I would have any of them. Like, it wasn't like I knew what the idea would look like, but I was prepared to play the dominoes and to say where I start isn't necessarily where I will go. There is a difference between being fearful of keeping momentum going, but also sitting in the silence or sitting in the energy of saying, is this a fit? And listening to other people of what they're responding to. And that can create new opportunities you never imagined when you jumped into, I might want to start to build something for me. But before I go into that path, I want to go back a little bit because you did hire a coach and you had a recognition that you needed help and that you maybe needed somebody to be a thinking partner or to kind of push you into questions you maybe would have not gone so easily towards on your own. So tell me a bit about that moment or that decision or that process where you said, I might need a bit of help here, because this is an interesting one. This was what my email newsletter was about all this week, which says there is a recognition you need to make, which is you need to walk the walk. And if you're not, it comes across as a lack of confidence and your audience sees it. So when you're in that path of indecision, what kind of steps did you go through? Or how did you go to the motions that said, I might need some help here? What did that look like?
Well, I'm no stranger to asking for help. I've been through addiction treatment about 20 years ago last month. And so I knew that asking for help was important. The crazy thing is, as much as I'd been involved with my own personal growth and mental health, I had no idea I was in burnout. None, until I started talking to my colleagues in the organization that I was working in. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm in burnout. Holy cow, I need some help. And so I didn't want to do the traditional route of therapy. I wanted to try coaching. And I found a lady who happened to be a former therapist who had turned coach. And I thought that would be a great fit. because she could challenge me in the traditional ways through therapy, but also maybe some coaching as well. So I just wanted to kind of see what coaching was all about. But I was pretty convinced she could help me get out of burnout, but I knew I needed something. And honestly, I made the decision impulsively.
Thank you for that, because this is it. Like sometimes, we overthink things.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's an interesting a whole idea on its own. But I love the fact that you were open to, I need some help. And the interesting thing, I just actually had a conversation with somebody from Sweden this morning with the exact same comment to me, which is, I didn't know I was in burnout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you cannot see your own spin cycle.
I knew I was just miserable emotionally. I was so stressed with the job I was in. The schedule was really weird. It was a huge adjustment. I had just come out of working with kids in residential treatment, which is stressful in itself. So I was triggered a little bit. My traumas were triggered a little bit. And then I go into this new job. It was just a horrible time. It was a horrible time. But yeah, I really didn't know what the signs were of burnout specifically. I knew about depression and anxiety, which are related, but I didn't know what burnout was. And I was absolutely in it.
Well, it's interesting. You can't always see the forest for the trees, but it's interesting when you say, I know I'm not happy here.
Yes.
And I always think, that is a real catalyst moment. And you have it many times. It's not like we solved this once. But when you have that moment of, I can't stay here, or the discomfort of staying here is no longer tolerable, because we white knuckle a lot of things. And we keep thinking, I'm going to stay in my comfort zone, even if it's miserable, because it's comfort. And a lot of people do that. But how did you start? So you decided you want some help, and you decided that you were open to finding somebody who had some common ground, but was equally going to push you to have uncomfortable conversations. Because guys, that's a big tip here. Coaching isn't comfortable. This is not a therapy best friend you're talking to. This is somebody who will hopefully really show the mirror and decide and ask the questions. Is that the reflection you want moving forward? If not, some things are going to need to move in a new direction. So I'm curious, when you go through that, and was it smooth sailing? So you made the commitment. What was the experience like?
Well, she had sent me these documents before we were supposed to have our first VIP day, and I didn't do them. I was so overwhelmed with everything that was going on. I didn't do them. I didn't realize the importance of doing them. I didn't really read the emails that she sent me because my life was so chaotic at that time. And so she just nailed me as soon as we got in that first VIP session. Why didn't you complete the paperwork? And she was just being really curious, but she asked me those hard questions all day. The whole day we were together. So it was painful, but it got me out of suffering, right? Whatever, all the questions we did, all the work we did that day, it got me out of the suffering. So I was totally fine with it after the whole day was over. It was painful in the moment, when you have to admit, oh yeah, I was an epic fail as a client, not doing
Sometimes
anything.
we're not coachable. I own that too. I have not always been coachable.
Yeah. So it was a good experience. Yeah. I really enjoyed her coaching. I really did. Yeah.
So she planted a seed that you could go and create a business around serving and helping others in a different capacity. Talk to me a little bit about that journey, and what fears did you have going into it? Was it, I'll leave it there. What were the fears or concerns you had as you jumped into this new way to serve people?
Talking to people. That was the biggest fear. She's like, just go to a bunch of networking meetings in your city and just start talking to people, having conversations. And I honestly I had been so out of practice with doing that, with just starting conversations in a regular, normal setting, because typically in therapy, you have people coming to you. So it's easier to start the conversation, but I was initiating it. And then I was trying to describe what I was doing. And I really didn't have that elevator speech nailed down about what I was going to offer. It felt really uncomfortable because I didn't know really what I wanted to do. And she gave me a ton of tools like a sales script or questions to ask and things like that. She laid it out as much as I could. But the piece that I was missing was finding something that really resonated with me
Mhm.
deeply so that I could feel committed and push through those uncomfortable feelings. I did it and I met some people, but I would back off because pursuing like leads and stuff like that, I would back off of that because I knew it just wasn't right. Something wasn't right. And I couldn't even articulate what it was until I had some distance.
Well, it's a great, this is a great lesson for all of us because, the truth is you can't figure it out unless you're in the action itself.
Mhm.
And it is going to be uncomfortable. And I know, who I met when the first, couple months when I was networking, I have a very different business now. I have a very
Mhm.
different confidence about my business. But I learned the confidence through the uncomfortableness of watching, observing. Yes, use the tools that you are provided, but you need to recognize when they feel like you and own your story.
Yeah.
The more you can tell your story, the more clarity you get around it.
Mhm.
Remembering, though, that the people who hear it for you are hearing it for the first time. So, energetically, it needs to be in alignment because if it's not, if you're bored by your business, if you're bored by your story, if you don't feel like you are confident about how you can make an impact, people feel it and see it.
Yeah.
And that does lead you to not moving forward
Mhm.
in the next step, but that's okay. Stay in the cycle
Yeah.
until it starts to go, this changes here, this feels a little uncomfortable here, but the key is the action. So when did you start to find your stride? What kind of things were happening in your world where the stride was like, this kind of feels good? And what did it do for your confidence and your vision of what comes next?
That happened last year, about around this time last year. I had signed up for a different coaching program where it was a little more one-on-one coaching. Like the first coach I had, it just didn't last long enough.
Mm.
Like she was getting me out of burnout. And then at the very end of our time together, we started working on a strategy for my business. And like as a new entrepreneur, I needed a lot more hand holding and one on one help. And I didn't have it until like a year after that.
Mm.
Actually, a couple of years after that. So I was just waffling around trying to figure out what I was doing before mid last year. And when I finally got some help, I figured out that I wanted to do burnout coaching. And so I had started working on a course. And again, I got to a point where it just wasn't right. There was something not right about it. Even though I had been through burnout, I do therapy with people who are in burnout. It just wasn't right. And I hated that. I don't know how many of us are course collectors, but holy cow.
Oh, lots of great course collectors. And I will tell you, as a course creator and a collector,
Yeah.
99% of us do not complete what we
Mhm.
start. So
Yep.
that comes down to accountability.
Yes.
The answer is not in the course. Generally, it's in the accountability and the implementation. So
Oh,
stack the deck in your favor and get more accountability versus
yeah.
another course. And that's maybe what you had with that
Yeah.
second coach, which was
Mhm.
a real handholding. And this is an interesting thing. I'm going to come back. I want to say
Okay.
that to the group really in simple terms. If you are going to work with somebody, and it doesn't matter whether it is a network you belong to and you have peer collaborations and support within it, or whether you go and get resources, whether that is a coach, you will not solve a business in 3 sessions, in 6 weeks, in 9 months. I started my current journey. My current coach is in this community. I committed 2 years out of the gate, and I work with people, and I know the big fear as a new entrepreneurs. I can't commit that long, but that also shows fear because it's like we can't build a sustainable plan when we're dabbling and when we
Mhm.
don't have the cycle of emotions, the cycle of revenue, the cycle of our commitment level through different seasons of life. It is a journey. And the same way that you would spend for education, which you have formal education behind you with your therapy background, is I committed to the education when I was in school. Please commit the same level of education to the school of learning to be a business owner.
Yeah.
Don't think that you can dabble. It just doesn't work.
Totally agree. Yeah, I dabbled. I was trying to find the answer And the answer was in here and in here.
Mm.
I didn't have somebody telling me, you need to look inside. You need to look inside. You need to figure out what you really love to do. And that's when I figured out what I wanted to do.
I love
I
it.
looked deeper inside, and the courses didn't help.
Stop the spin.
Yeah, there's a lot of courses that actually try to help you do that, but without somebody to talk to about it
Mm.
and bounce ideas off and really talk through it, it's really difficult to do on your
That
own,
is
just
really
like you said.
I agree with that. So what I love about your story and when Rhonda introduced me to you or what you were all about was about the conversation around burnout, specifically to entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
because this is something we're not talking about.
Yeah.
And I think we need to, because, when you are starting the journey, there's a real, I'm going to say a terrible toxic hero expectation that I need to do it
Mhm.
all and I need to do it all myself. And we're scared that we have not mapped out along enough runway with support to get there. And so, how did you start to really realize this was a need? And what do you see happening right now with entrepreneurs?
So for myself, I realized it was a need after I finished that program I was just mentioning where I was creating that burnout course. I realized, oh my gosh, I love that. I love that group atmosphere of accountability. I love the one-on-one accountability. And I knew I needed that, but I had spent so much money collecting courses that I was like, crap, I can't even afford it. I've like maxed out my credit cards and but then I just again kind of impulsively, but knowing I needed it, I hired, another coach. Like I know I need this one-on-one.
Mm.
And I did have 3 sessions with another coach. Wasn't enough, of course, just like you said.
Mhm.
And I see a lot of entrepreneurs that are in that same boat as I was, floundering, not knowing how to decide what to do. And the scary part is we don't spend enough time interviewing our coaches
Mhm.
to find the best one that fits. That was my thing. And I got lucky with my last coach because she's freaking amazing.
Awesome.
But I didn't know that it was okay to interview them and not commit to something on that first phone call with them.
Yeah, great
Like,
insight.
yeah.
And I think that's true. And it's an interesting one. And not only do you need to interview them, I always remind the coaches that, and I don't coach specifically coaches, although I have had some coaching clients that are coaches. But I always say to them, remember, your goal is you decide when to make an offer. Okay, not every client is a fit for you. That's the same on both sides of the table here. You need to evaluate what is the value, and it's important to be asking and getting clear. This is the value I see with you, and this is why I want to work together. This is my expectations, and this is what I will define or measure success against, so that you have a very clear roadmap when you do decide to start a relationship, because this is a very intimate dialogue. You have to feel trust, you have to feel respect on both sides, and you do also have to have privilege to say, we're going to have the hard conversations. Do I have your permission on both sides? Yes, 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 you do. And from that point on, when you are interviewing, you do need to decide and commit when it's right.
Mhm.
And I love that you've had great success and that you have continued to see the value in that. So when you're working with clients in your coaching role, talking about burnout, what are some of the tools you have, or what are some of the questions you might be asking us to help us say, are we in it? Because maybe part of the challenge we're all in is I don't actually know I'm in burnout, just like you had that experience yourself.
So luckily there's some assessments out there and people, it's like 20, 30 questions and people just, take the assessment. I love assessments. I love data. Of course, I'm going to ask them specific questions like what's not going well in your life? What is going well in your life? What do you want to change? What do you want things to look like? Of course, those typical kind of interview questions, but I definitely have them go through an assessment and we talk through it. It's like, did you know that this was a problem? And I find that a lot of people kind of, what I mentioned to you long ago or before we started, is that people don't know, like myself, that there's a problem until you ask difficult questions or you have them do the assessments and they're like, whoa, this is not what I expected. So I am doing what I do as a therapist and as a coach. I'm not afraid of asking the hard questions because that's where the growth comes.
It is true. And I think, this can't be understated. You need to have the courage to ask the questions, and you need to be having the courage to answer honestly.
Yeah.
And that starts the moment you can do that, you start to get out of the spin. And it does lead you to do the inner work of, what do I really want? And I always, I'm my own perspective when I'm coaching, I said, you do know what you want. The problem is you don't have trust in it. And you can whisper it to me until you're ready to roar it to the world. But you do instinctively, because all of what you said to me today is, it felt off. I knew when it felt right. This is instinctive. This is guidance. You can take it in any way you would like to do it, but there is trust. I always am so passionate about saying you should never hesitate to bet on yourself.
Yeah.
Because through any journey, and there will be good seasons and tough seasons, the ones that we don't want to talk about are the ones the world needs to have conversations around, is that in every difficult moment, you had yourself.
Yeah, always.
Never remember that. You always had yourself. So even when you're unsure, it's okay to say courageously, I'd like to talk about this. Don't assume you can't afford it. Don't assume it's not the right thing. Ask. And then sit in the stillness. And I'm curious, as you look back in that last year, because it sounds like it's been quite a transformational year for you, what do you wish you'd known or action you'd taken sooner?
Kind of like what I just said, which is knowing I needed help and interviewing people to find out. But I think even before then, I needed to self-reflect, just like you said, which is to ask myself those questions. What do I want? And what am I going to look for in somebody to help me find it? My current coach, there was just something about her. She's very heart-centered and a grounded person. And I didn't really know I needed that until I found her. I'm like, I don't know what it is about you. So it's like taking that time to self-reflect before we impulsively jump into things. And if we're attracted to somebody, why? Why are we attracted to that person? What is it that that person can offer us that feels safe? I think that was a big thing for me. I wanted to feel emotionally safe with a coach, is
100%.
that they would challenge, they would push me, but they would know when to back off when it was too much. So knowing things like that, but we have to know ourselves. And sometimes we don't know ourselves, just like I didn't for a couple of years.
Got lost somewhere along the way, but you've found yourself.
Right. It's really taking the time to reflect on what I need and what I want in my business.
And as you look forward, why would people, like when you think about your expertise and kind of that brand, I love the fact that you've got that therapy background, but also coaching, because they are different things. Just so our audience is clear, they are very different things.
Yes.
Why do you think, when people come to you, or when your clients come to you now, why are they choosing you? What is it unique that makes you different? Because this is important about owning it. You've talked about you finding it. How do you communicate that? And what do they say to you is what they're hearing when they meet you?
They feel safe and comfortable. And I also know how to have fun. I'm kind of fun. I have,
Don't underestimate the fun factor, people. Please have fun with the people you work with. You actually get to choose. The same way I said you get to offer, you get to choose who to do life with. Please choose people that lift you and have fun and can have a sense of humor.
Yeah. So I think, I love making people feel safe to open up to me and to be that rigorously honest part of self, so we can be on this journey together. I'm very humble, come from humble beginnings growing up as a farmer's daughter. So I think people see that and they resonate with it, and they know that I'm not going to just jump down their throat if I see something that's concerning.
Well, and I think, if we're just spending some time with you, this is an interesting one, and it's leadership. It is confidence. And I love the fact that I always talk about being rooted in my commitment to what comes next. And people respond to that. Whether you intellectually can articulate it or not is not necessarily the most important or relevant to it, but saying, people will borrow your confidence and your knowledge way before they ever are interested in your product or service. And that's that unknown. That's why you must own your story, though.
Yeah.
and not just show the highlight reel. I think one thing I want this community, when we created it, was I want to keep it real. And the reason for that is because we need authentic leaders. Mm-hmm. We need authentic collaborators. And so if you're looking for ways and people to collaborate with, or ways people can engage with you, tell us a little bit about what that looks like, because I'd love to give you the opportunity to meet more of our amazing community here, and tell me a little bit about how you like to collaborate, what you like to look for, and how people can find you.
So people can find me in the group, of course. They can find me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but I don't engage as much as on Instagram. So Facebook is probably the primary, but then of course you can email me, Janeen at janeenolmos.com. It's fairly simple. So if you like that method of communications, I'm totally open to that on my email every day, but I love being on Facebook because it's a little more casual vibe, and just hit me up in the DM. I'd love to get to know you.
I love it. And I want to vision cast for a sec, because I feel like it's Friday afternoon. We need a vision casting question. What hope do you have for the future? I mean, we hear a lot of going on about the headwinds going on, burnout being on the rise, recession, words like that are very, concerning for especially entrepreneurs. But where do you see hope going forward? Cast me to the vision of what you see as possible and why you're excited to continue to take your journey as an entrepreneur forward.
Because I'm really grounded in what I'm doing, I trust that, money's been a factor, and I trust it's going to come. I do trust the process, and that's very difficult to do. But back in treatment, I learned to trust the process. Treatment was horribly humiliating and shaming, but it's the best thing I ever did for myself. And if I can share that with somebody, I will absolutely do that. So I think that's the thing, is the future looks freaking amazing. I'm so excited by it.
I'm excited by the impact you're making. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're about chasing our dreams and making the positive impact. It is not a smooth sailing journey, nor would we be the people we are if it had been. So lean into the discomfort, recognize your potential, learn you may not have it all together. Ask for support, seek guidance, trust your instinct. Because I believe, and I agree with you, there is so much potential before you.
Yeah.
And we are here to help you get there.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts?
I'm just really grateful to be here. I can't wait to meet more of you in this amazing group. And thank you for having this group. Holy cow. I think we all need this as entrepreneurs.
You are very welcome. It's an interesting thing, because I started this business, or this group, right when I started my first business. And here's why. Because when I first started my business, there's a funny story about it. I didn't get out of bed on Wednesday planning to start a business until someone in my network had reached out and said, tell me a little bit about what you're at, because I have an interesting idea. And that always catches my interest. Curiosity is what leads me. It's what I coach around a lot. You will grow your business if you can spark curiosity. I started my business on Friday because I could see the potential. It was nothing what I imagined it would be, but I was in, and I swan down to get a cup of tea in the morning with my husband in the kitchen. I said, by the way, I started my first business. And he's like, we've had a conversation around this. And I was like, we were engaged at the time. We weren't quite married. And I'm like, it didn't even occur to me. And I will just be completely honest. It didn't occur to me to seek counsel, because I have this life I just never needed to before. I was single all of my life, and I've done some really amazing adventures along my journey. But I knew I had the confidence to build right away. And I had the confidence to do that. Most do not. Yeah. And most, because they are accidental or intrepid entrepreneurs, that the fear of judgment hold them back. And I wanted to create a safe space, which was exactly what you said, a safe space to come to and say, you can sit here till you're ready to stand. We want to feature different people in this community for two reasons. For you to see that the journey is different for all of us. And yet we share the commitment to giving it everything we've got. And when you need help, please ask. Please reach out to Janeen. Please reach out to the community members saying, I'm looking to expand, or I need some help, or who does this? Because the greatest thing about entrepreneurship is we are stronger together, and we do not all have the same expertise and skills. So if it's not your wheelhouse, trust me when I hope to say you'll find it here in our community. I'm so glad you came to chat with us on this Friday afternoon. Keep being awesome. Thanks for being here, Rhonda. We appreciate you being here live. Have a great weekend. Be back here next week. I've got another amazing entrepreneur, another woman entrepreneur who runs a really big network. I want to talk about her journey, which has been bumpy, as are most of ours. So have a great weekend. Thanks very much for being here, everybody. We will see you next week. Take care.